think perhaps that's a little slow actually, but anyway. Good evening. I'm Councillor Alan Bartlett, the Chairman for the Corporate Services Policy Advisory Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the meeting this evening. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel, but will anybody else be recording the proceedings? No. I asked just so that people at the meeting will know if this is happening. If the fire alarm sounds during the meeting, please remain seated and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Item 1, apologies. I've received apologies from Councillor Gooch, Hinder, and I've received apologies from Councillor Webb. Councillor Harper?
I just wanted to check, because we've only 4 of us. Are we quorum? Okay. No. Otherwise we could go home now.
Yeah, so the quorum of any committee is not less than 4 members. Not less than 4.
Right, I see. I do believe Councillor Forecast will be joining us at some point, and perhaps Councillor Cannon will. I've got item 2, substitute members. Well, I've got here that Stan Forecast is substituting, but he's not here yet. So we'll leave that. And was that item 3, urgent items? There are no urgent updates. Item 4, notification of visiting members. I can't see any visiting members. Item 5, disclosures by members and officers. Are there any disclosures by members or officers? No, excellent. Item 6, disclosures of lobbying. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? No, okay. Item 7, to consider whether any items should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. I move that all items be taken in public. Is that agreed? Excellent. Item 8, minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of February 2024. Are there any comments on the accuracy of those minutes? No. Okay, so I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of February 2024 be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Agreed. Excellent. As Councillor Thompson has just walked in, can I just ask if you have any disclosures of lobbying? No, and are there any other disclosures? Okay. No problem. Right, so yeah, we've agreed the minutes. Item 9, the forward plan relating to the committee's terms of reference. Are there any comments on the formal plan, or does the Cabinet member wish to make any comments? No, okay, so I move that the forward plan be noted. Is that agreed? Excellent. Item 10, draft key performance indicators. I'd like to call on Councillor Perry, the Cabinet member for Corporate Services, to introduce the report, please, if you
may. Thank you, Chairman and members. KPIs are extremely important part of how we manage our business and how we manage our finances. And I think this report sets out, I think what I will say are developments and improvements to our KPIs. If you look into the report, you'll see that the Office of Local Government, which is a lovely thing, Oflog. When I first read that, I wondered what the hell they were talking about. But the Office of Local Government are setting up their own, what I would call metrics. And the idea behind this is to facilitate comparisons between the performance of various local authorities, which I think actually is a very good idea. And in doing that, we are also obviously need to take that into account and we are following that up. You'll see in the report, I think it's on page 10, where we are proposing to adopt additional KPIs. We're talking now for 24-25, obviously, which reflect what is going on with the Office of Local Government and their own metrics. Now, on page 9, you'll see set out the metrics they're currently proposing. These will develop further, and it is obviously very early days in the system, but there is a target, I think, to complete things by July 2025, so we have a full set, and this will be something that I think will be a big improvement. The other point I would make in the report, and is highlighted, is that we are developing our dashboard, which will again allow us to go into greater detail and allow the PACs in turn to, if you like, request greater detail in the system. And I think this again would be a very good thing. It will also improve, develop the reporting process as well, so that in fact there'll be more reports, and it'll be a more detailed reports. So all in all, I think this is a very positive proposal, and I'll leave it there for any questions. We have Carly with us, who's an expert in this area, but I think the KPIs are very important, and the work done on them is very important, and this represents, I think, a further development and improvement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. I've got Councillor Harper first, please.
Thank you, Chair. No, I mean, this seems good news that we're going to have a better holistic picture of how corporate services and the council is performing going ahead. One thing is a question, I suppose, is around the issue of carbon accounting, because it's been discussed, I know, at audit and whatever it's called, governance committee. And my understanding was that carbon accounting was going to be introduced on the 1st of April, and that we were supposed to be having council-wide briefings prior to that. Well, bearing in mind it's now, what's the date? The 13th of March. I just wondered where we are with the whole issue of carbon accounting. Because obviously if we had brought that in, that would have been an incredibly strong, what's the word? Indicator, given our commitment in terms of climate change and biodiversity to 2030. I don't know, John or Mark, if perhaps either of you, through the chair, if either of you can got an answer on that.
Yes, Councillor Perry.
I'll start off and I'll hand over to Mark or Carly. You're right to raise this, Councillor Harper. It's a very important point, and I know our leader, David Burton, is incredibly keen on this, and I believe work is in progress, but I would say just one thing. We are in what I would call fairly new ground on this, and clearly we have to look at this fairly carefully, and there's a lot of work involved in it, but it is incredibly important. But I'll hand over to Mark or Carly. I'm sure you've got this in hand. Thank you.
Thank you. So it isn't my area of expertise. I'm obviously here to present the KPIs and performance. However, my team also oversees dashboards and the dashboard programme of works that goes on in the council, and we have for some time now produced a beta version of a carbon counting dashboard, which is on our website. It's on the carbon emissions website as well. We refresh that twice a year because obviously it's a big collection of data across the organisation, and we're currently preparing for the annual refresh of that so that we would have a full picture of the 23-24 emissions as well. So we work closely with the biodiversity and climate change team to produce that for them. But the other points that you've mentioned about having an update, I can take that away and feed that back to them as well.
Back quickly. I mean, I think if it'd be useful if that's, you know, because I mean, obviously most councillors don't get a chance to look at everything on the website and the size of it. But perhaps given the importance of it, is when we get the half-yearly updates on the biodiversity and climate action plan, if those indices perhaps could be, attached to it, because I think that would really help inform, the debate within the council. And I'm thinking especially after May, and who knows what the complexion of the council is going to be and who's going to be here or not. The more information in terms of, that holistic picture, I think would really be good for their first cycle. That's okay.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. Please forgive me. I'm going to carry on waving my "I'm the new boy" here. I'm just learning what's going on. Flag that I've been waving around since last May. Please forgive me, therefore, if I say something that demonstrates more of my ignorance than of anything helpful. I am sceptical about what I read on page 12. I really wonder as to what extent these metrics, for want of a better phrase, really tell us about the effectiveness of the council, even in regard of corporate services. I find it difficult to take seriously that percentage of ombudsman's complaints upheld, or number of upheld complaints per 10,000 population, are really useful, providing useful insight into our effectiveness, Mr. Chairman. It seems hard to be able to tell the difference between large numbers of spurious complaints or small numbers of very pointed and pertinent and appropriate complaints. So just which statistics are assembled and adopted as key performance indicators for the performance of the council? I think there needs to be some explanation, some justification, some rationale for why these particular things are being adopted. I understand the point from your introduction, Cabinet Member Councillor Perry, that there is guidance here from higher tier of government. I'd like to see what the justification for that is. Perhaps you can point me to that. To pop down to the last example in the list, Councillor Harper has already touched on issues around carbon. I see the single example on this on the sheet on page 12 is percentage reduction in carbon emissions for the fleet. It seems to me, Mr. Chairman, that the large gains in that regard have already been achieved by this council. I've had the privilege of going up to the depot and seeing the serried rows of electric charging points. It's excellent work and must be welcomed. It's very good news indeed. I think that the new waste contract contracts out the carbon cost of the refuse collection to the subcontractor. So the carbon cost of the rubbish collection, as I understand it, won't appear on our figures. It's been removed to theirs. So in those couple of examples, Mr. Chairman, I have to say that while I like to frame myself, and I hope Councillor Perry appreciates this, as a glass half full person rather than a glass half empty person, I am struggling to understand how these metrics really give us a handle on being able to say how this council is serving its community, perhaps attempting some difficult things which achieve small gains, compared with a lot of easy things that are easy to measure and give large headline results to. Forgive me, Mr. Chairman, if some of those remarks are rather too general, but I think that I'm trying to make a cogent point, and I hope that's appreciated.
Would you like to come in?
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Just to pick that into points, the first point around the Ombudsman and the complaints. As Councillor Perry mentioned, those indicators are coming straight from Oflog. So the government have decided that they think that is an effective way to manage local authority. We have fed back as a council on those indicators. They are still including them for the time being. They haven't released the results of the consultation. So we would like PACS to have an oversight as to what the government is monitoring on us, so that we internally know what's being reported up to them. So that's why they're included. You had a second point about buildings and fleet, or fleet. You're right about the waste contract fleet. That isn't included within the counting that they do here. The fleet would be those that are under John Edwards' team, that fleet, and you're right, they're up to 11 electric vehicles. And again, this information is captured on the dashboard if you have time to reflect on that on the website. And obviously the indicators here in draft for the committee to recommend or recommend additions to. So I'd take that on board.
Thank you very much. Just quickly before I come to you, Councillor Cook, can I ask Councillor Cannon, are there any disclosures? at all?
Nothing. To
Nothing, and
declare,
any disclosures of lobbying?
No, and apologies for being late. Somebody parked, a Hermes driver parked on my drive, so I couldn't get out.
Okay, no problem. Councillor Cook, you were next.
Thank you, Chairman. And I agree with Councillor Perry. I think what we've got here is a report that moves the council forward in terms of its reporting, and it's to be welcomed. I think that clearly what we're looking at are KPIs that relate really to the portfolio that comes under the corporate services, and that's been exemplified in terms of things that are reported elsewhere. We look at what we seem to be looking at, though, is a single option. There are, and I'm kind of wondering what else was considered by the. I mean, based on the national data. I'm reading 4.1 national data sets, strategic priorities, and expert officer advice. Well, I'm always grateful for expert officer advice, and the more expert, the better. What else was considered? What was rejected? Or have we been basically, as Councillor Perry was alluding to, we've basically just taken what we've been told to do by government and interpreted that in and taken what bits fit corporate services, and it's there. Because there's another thing that's not on there that I would have thought is a statutory duty of all local authorities to monitor and look at: freedom of information, and how many freedom of information requests we receive, and this would be, I believe, a matter for this committee, and how many of those are responded to within 20 days as the statute requires, for example. That's not in there. It's something that we could. So what's not there that we could look at, and I'm going to answer my question myself, just to the extent that this will be a living document, and as we move along as a committee next year and beyond, we can develop this in a way that meets the committee's recommendations. I know you're nodding your head, Anna. Thank you for that. But I just wanted to get more of a feel for what else has been looked at and maybe has been rejected. But I do think that this is a step forward, and I'm grateful for the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Perry, did you want to come on?
I just wanted to come back quickly on Councillor Thompson said, because if you go to paragraph 3.5 on the paper, I'm sorry if I'm having to use my glasses here, but you'll see that these aren't developed in a sort of vacuum, a sort of bubble. They depend, obviously they relate to Oflog, the new metrics, but they also reflect feedback from members. So it's in your hands as much as anything else. If you want to change the KPIs, propose them. It's simple as that, particularly through the PAC process, which I personally very much appreciate. So I think, you know, it's not just someone dreamt up. These do have relevance. And the Oflog is very important for me, because I think a comparison of metrics between different local authorities is extremely useful, actually, and I think very transparent. So I think, yes, I understand this is not perfect, but I do think it's a step in the right direction, as Councillor Cook has rightly said, and I think it's a very good proposal that's being put forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, did you?
Thank you for that reply, Councillor Perry. I must protest that the tense in 3.5 says indicators have been developed based upon, whereas your statements have pointed us towards what we might do in the future. They seem to me to be two rather different things. I look forward to future contributions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Would one of you be able to answer the points that Gary raised as well, please?
Points about what was excluded. Those points. Absolutely. Appeared.
Pardon, sorry. But given what we do at the moment, I completely agree with John. It's a step in the right direction, and it needs to be a living document that evolves over time. And I think that's what Councillor Perry is saying. And I have no problem with that whatsoever. This is a baseline, and we're establishing a baseline. I just wanted to get some context to what we're being asked to agree.
Thank you.
So, before my time, we used to have a huge amount of KPIs that were reported to committees or to the system back then. And the feedback from members was there was too much, there was too many. So I believe about 4 or 5 years ago, pre-COVID, we did an exercise where we refined all those indicators down. As the packs were emerged, they were then realigned to the relevant packs. So for corporate services this year, you've got a very small amount, which you can see in the next item. What we've done is expanded that set, so nothing's been excluded as such. We've expanded that set with feedback that we've taken from all of the packs over the course of the year. We have had quite a lot of feedback from other packs as to what is missing. We've taken that on board, and that's been added into the different sets for the other packs. And as I said, we've then aligned them with what the government are reporting on us. So when some of them might say new, it's because the terminology has changed in what government are now recording from us. We wouldn't really want to go back to a place where we're presenting 50, 60 KPIs, because you lose the meaning in that. But we do welcome more feedback, and as I said to Councillor Thompson, please do recommend if you'd like additions to be added into that list.
Well, Chairman, I will make the suggestion that freedom of information requests should be recorded somewhere, and I think it's a matter for this committee, given that it's a statutory duty, and it carries some fairly severe penalties if we don't meet our statutory duties in the time frame that the statute provides for. That's not here, and I think it should be. Thank you.
Are you proposing that as an amendment to what we have on the papers?
If I need to, Chairman, yes, I will, because I think that, unless it's being reported somewhere else.
I'll just wait for clarification on that, and then.
Is it really reported somewhere else?
That's just what I've been informed. So we have the annual governance committee, and there is a specific annual report bought on the those metrics there. Apologies, that doesn't fall under my remit. So,
Chairman, for a reason I will explain, that is an annual report, by which time, if we are falling short of the standards that are required, it's too late. So I'd so move that we add freedom of information reporting to the KPIs, please. Okay. If that's seconded, please.
Okay, Councillor Harper seconded that. Are there any other comments on this? No. Okay, so I propose that we... Do we have to have a formal vote? Yeah, I propose that we vote on the amended... Are you happy to accept the recommendation as per... Just... Yes, yeah, yeah. And are you still happy with that? Yeah. Okay. So, all those in favour? So that's unanimous. Excellent. Lovely. Thank you very much. I now move on to item 11, the third quarter finance, performance and risk monitoring reports. And I'd like to call on Councillor Perry, the Cabinet Member for Corporate Services, to introduce the reports.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is obviously a very important item, and it's updates on the financial position and the other areas that come associated with it, which I'll allude to as I go through. First of all, let me say that the corporate services area clearly has an underspend. We come in with a bit of a surplus for the third quarter of just under a million. It's now about 960,000 it's estimated that it will be. This is mainly due to low interest rates, really. And basically, we did some very good early deals on negotiating borrowing rates. And now we've been in a good position where we can make money by lending some out on a short-term basis, so which is what we've done. Also, of course, interest rates coming down has meant that our costs have improved. So on two areas, it's had quite a significant effect in the corporate services side. However, on the main, looking at the council as a whole, we are now forecasting it will be an overspend. It's a little lower than we were saying before, around about 238,000. Now that is being built in, obviously, to the 24-25, so it's not really a big issue, and it's pretty well in line with what we've been saying all along. So I think that is a pretty good situation to be in. Of the other areas in the corporate services area, I think the KPIs we've briefed on, but there are basically only two and they're basically to do with collection rates. And here the business rates collection is better than target. The council tax is very, very slightly lower than target, hasn't quite made it, but if you rounded the figures up, actually it would be on target, so it's that close. So from that point of view, I think it's done very, very well. A couple of other areas I wanted to just tackle on. One is we are proposing to increase the contract where you for officers. We got it at 75,000 at the moment, and below that they got delegated powers. I think, given that the increasing costs and everything else, 100,000 makes a lot more sense. So that is something that is in the report and will be proposed. There are also some write-offs that we've got to consider. I think they are set out, I think, in Appendix 5, I think, of the report. And these are basically three companies, and one is in liquidation, the other two have been dissolved. So really, that the likelihood of getting any money is about 83,000, if memory serves me right, and that will we need approval, obviously, to write that off eventually, but certainly that is the recommendation. I think they're the main things I really wanted to highlight. Overall, we are, I think, in a pretty good position. So, but obviously, I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. I've got Councillor Harper, please.
Thank you, Chair. Could I make a request to the Director that at the next time as our successor committee takes this type of report, that it's potentially broken down into a number of reports, because it's almost like the whole meeting is just one agenda item, because it's like you almost feel like everything you can think of in terms of monitoring is all put into one report. and you just look at the list of the appendices. So we've got budget monitoring, key performance monitoring, UK Prosperity Fund update, the risk update, then the one you've just referred to about the NNDR, and then new contracts approvals. And to be honest, having them all lumped into one report, I think doesn't do. It means the items just don't really get a chance to be looked into, just because this report covers so many different aspects. If we just had it on budget monitoring and performance monitoring, as say, as one report, and then the risk update should be a separate item, because if we're giving any sensible attention to the risk register of the council, which we should do, it really should not just be like Appendix 4 tucked away, in a report underneath the overall finances, because I think you've highlighted, and this highlights quite a lot of issues in terms of revenue and capital. So that's my first request, if you like, for going forward. I've got some specific questions on a number of the items here. So if we kick off on page 29, which is Maidstone Property Holdings, residential properties were going to be £200,000 overspent. Now that's relating obviously to works at Granada House, and I'm aware the ground floor, I think, of Granada House is going to be used as this innovation hub, or whatever it's going to be called, the arts and culture hub. Are we likely to have all the income flowing in from the 1st of April in Granada House, or if we're not, has that been reflected in our budget for 2024-25, so that we don't sort of go straight into the new year, excuse me, and find we're underachieving on income there? Okay, so that's the first detailed question. My next one is on page 32, and it's about the homeless temporary accommodation, which we spoke quite a bit at the council meeting a couple of weeks ago. But I notice it's just 10,000 shy now of £1 million, and on our overall net budget, £1 million is a massive figure. Now, I assume that we've increased the budget provision in the new year for it. But I suppose my question is do we think we have increased it sufficient? Bear in mind that in the last quarter, it's gone up from £250,000, so 747,000, to just under, say, 10,000 less than £1 million. So it's clearly on a massive upward trajectory. And if that's continuing and continues through next year, by this time next year, we'll be looking at a £2 million compared to where we budgeted originally last year. So I just like a bit of assurance on that. And then on Lockmeadow, on the following page, on 33, where we're saying we've got obviously some vacant units, I'm just wondering, and this may be a question for our environmental health, given the rat infestation at Lockmeadow, which was highlighted in the Kent Messenger, and in particular in the Odeon Cinema, I'm just wondering whether that may have an impact in terms of getting the building, fit for future lettings. Because clearly, given those rats running around everywhere, depending what sort of business you're thinking of setting up in Lockmeadow, you may have some cautions on it. Then going on to page 35, I see this is why these all should be set up as different items. So the first two the second two items there, 1,000 affordable homes and temporary accommodation, which are both obviously linked. I note we are, on the affordable homes, we've only done 50% of what we expected to do. Now, okay, I'm aware there's a number of projects going through now. Are we likely to pick up what we will have budgeted for 24-25 plus this slippage of £3 million? Presumably, in terms of making sure that we're on track for delivery there. And a similar thing with the temporary accommodation. And then the final one is on the following page, on page 36, which is biodiversity and climate change. Again, there's a large underspend or slippage of £2 million. And given the importance everybody attaches to biodiversity and climate change, for a budget of £3 million, having spent under £1 million on it, is rather worrying. And I'm just thinking, and clearly given the ability to get to carbon neutrality within a few years, if we're slipping on this budget at this sort of extent, I'd just like some assurance from the officers that we should be able to make that up.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Happy to go through the questions Councillor Hupp has raised and try and give responses. The first one about the occupation of Granada House. Work is underway on the first and second floors to provide new residential accommodation, and we're expecting that to be complete in the summer. So we may have a bit of a shortfall because we won't be able to get new tenants in right from 1st of April, but it certainly will be ready for occupation, we hope, early in the new year. Your next point was about the overspend on temporary accommodation and whether there's a risk for next year. I mean, certainly there's a risk, and it's very difficult to predict the demand that we will face. I mean, a couple of positive things that I think will help us to manage the budget for next year. We have new properties coming on stream all the time as a result of the programme of purchasing street properties, which generally only require a small amount of work before they're ready for occupation for homeless families. So that will bring down expenditure because we won't be paying the very high costs for overnight accommodation. And the other thing we've mentioned here about part of the issue being the challenge of recovering rent, and we are putting a lot of work into that and looking at systems in that area and making sure we're maximising the rental income that we collect from homeless families, because generally they can recover it through housing benefit. So absolutely a risk, but I think we've got steps in place to manage it. On Lockmeadow, I don't think you should believe everything that you read in the press. First of all, it wasn't rats, it was mice, and it was confined to the cinema to the extent that there was ever a problem. So we've got no evidence that there's any problems with rodent infestation elsewhere in the complex, and it's certainly not been a factor. I mean, certainly it's been challenging finding new tenants, but that's not a factor in those issues about identifying new tenants at Lockmeadow. On the capital programme on page 35, yes, there has been slippage on the affordable housing programme just because of the sheer amount of work that's been needed, particularly on Maidstone East, to get it to the stage of applying for planning permission, but that will hopefully be made up in the new financial year. So that's the 3.3 million slippage on the 1,000 affordable homes. On temporary accommodation, where there's a bigger slippage figure, this is where we're buying street properties for homeless families. Now, although there will be slippage, there's around 3 million of purchases in the pipeline where we've made offers for properties, and just because of the time scale between making offers and completing on purchases, that 3 million, a lot of it will fall in the new financial year, so we will likewise make up the shortfall this year in next year's figures. And the final question on biodiversity and climate change. I mean, there is a lot going on in this area, and it was reported to this committee about the work that is about to get underway on decarbonisation of Maidstone House and the link. So although a lot of that is grant funded, we will be able to use this money to complement that. So yes, we've not spent all the money that we'd hoped to this year, but there will be going forward with the decarbonisation project on Maidstone House and the link in 24-25 and a range of other projects. So again, that's just a timing issue.
Councillor Harper.
Actually, on the talking about decarbonisation, and it was very good news that we achieved that grant to help with Maidstone House, because I think talking with John and yourself at other meetings, you only had like a 10-minute slot to put the grant application online, or some ridiculous timetable. So the fact that we've actually got some money out of that, I think, is really good. The leader, I think it might have been, was saying that one idea in the pipeline for carbon neutrality was to do with putting effectively a roof on the car park at the leisure centre, and obviously having solar panels there. If that were to, would this be the sort of budget, this sort of £2 million, which would help finance that type of work? Because obviously, if that were to get planning permission and to go ahead, that would have a massive generation of electricity. Be a mini power station if you think the size of that car park, if solar panels covered the whole lot. So, but obviously the capital costs of doing it would be quite substantial. So, I'm just sort of trying to wonder what sort of budget that would come under at this stage. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. Yes, in the capital programme for next year, we've split out the budget between biodiversity and climate change and measures to improve our own corporate properties. So in next year's monitoring, you'll be able to see how we're spending that money. There's no specific plans at the moment for the leisure centre, but certainly that is the project you mentioned is one of the ideas that's under consideration.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Thompson. Next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at item 4.6 on page 20 in the section on procurement levels. I'm on record as calling for and welcoming economies of scale partnerships with local districts, our friends in Swale or Tunbridge Wells, or indeed anywhere else where there are economies and efficiencies to be gained. I'm interested in reading paragraph 4.6 on the procurement partnership with Tunbridge Wells to perhaps refer to Councillor Cook's comments earlier on the presentation of options for our consideration. I would like to ask how joint procurement will or might work, and how will or might the specifications be agreed, so that we can be assured that we've considered the ways in which operational efficiency is achieved between the various districts without hampering anyone's freedom to lead their own communities in the way that the elected members see fit. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Thompson. The proposal in this report is simply about changing approval levels. As you mentioned earlier, you're relatively new to the council. The procurement partnership with Tunbridge Wells actually goes back to 2020, so it's not a new partnership, but what these changes mean is that the partnership will be more effective because we'll be having consistent approval levels between the two authorities. The decision was made in 2020 to go into this partnership with Tunbridge Wells because we could achieve some critical mass by combining our procurement teams. We were able to access a high level of procurement skills by getting together with another authority, and although it may not be that visible to members, I think we've got very good value from that partnership over the past couple of years because we've had good advice on procurements. We've been able to comply with really quite complex procurement legislation, and we've made good purchasing decisions. So I think the partnership is working well, but that's not actually the decision that members are being asked to make this evening. The decision is simply about the approval levels that we're proposing.
With a view to the second part of that paragraph, note that the new approval levels will require a change to the Council's constitution and will therefore now be considered by the Democracy and General Purposes Committee and by the Council. I refer to Councillor Cook's remarks earlier. It would be good to know that, those preparations have been done to provide us with an understanding of what options might be available. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we need to remember that what we're looking at here is history, and it's history in the sense of how we've performed against expectations. And when we look at the budget monitoring, we're actually doing rather well. I think, given the upheaval, the issues that we've had with inflation, costs, utility bills, etc., to be able to present this third quarter budget monitoring report and actually to be within a whisker overall, there's some swings and roundabouts in there, but overall we're pretty well on the button. So I'd like to say congratulations to the officer team and to John Perry and his colleagues at Cabinet for actually presenting what is a very fine position for this council to be in after what has been a fairly torrid and difficult time. And I think that you know, we as a council, all of us together, can take great pride in that. So well done. I don't have a problem, Chairman, in terms of the and I will view them as fairly slight modifications in terms of the levels of delegation. But the delegation levels are referred to in the Constitution, and therefore that's why it's got to go democratic back through the council, and for the modification to the Constitution to bring it in line with what will be practiced. I think we have a situation with our partnerships with Swale and Tunbridge Wells are on the whole working well, but I do take Councillor Thompson's point in terms of making sure that continues to work for our benefit and for the benefit of the people of residents of Maidstone, ensuring that their pound, they get their value in terms of rent and how their money is spent. And I'm sure he would appreciate, therefore, that's why Kent is also determined to do so with regards to the Adult Education Centre in Maidstone as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Any other comments? Councillor Perry, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just a brief point. It's a point that Councillor Harper made right at the very beginning on the size of this report and what it contains. I think it's it is a valid comment, it really is. And I think for next year, I think this is something that can be reviewed, maybe looked at, and that can be taken on board. So we can be presented in a slightly more digestible form, maybe. It's a very good report, and it's been very well written, I think. So the staff should be congratulated on that, but it could be split up a bit. So I think the point's well made. Thank you.
Councillor Cook.
Yeah, thank you, Jim, for allowing me back. It was something I was going to mention as well. I really don't mind whether it comes how the information is presented, because at the end of the day, the report is going. But we need the information to be presented so we can monitor it in a proficient and professional manner. Whether we cut that up and present it in one report, two reports in different sections and what have you, I really don't mind. I just want to make sure that we continue to have access to the information and to be able to monitor the budget in the way that it needs to be monitored. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Any other comments? No. Okay. Well, I'll move from the chair that can I do this all in one? That we accept the various reports are noted, and then we approve the business rates write-off, and that we accept the recommendation to approve the new contract approval levels as per the papers. Is that seconded?
I'm happy to second, Chairman.
Second. And is that agreed, members? Agreed. Okay, excellent. So now we move on to item 12, Maidstone Property Holdings Limited, and I'd like to call on Councillor Perry to introduce this report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, this is hopefully one that can be accepted. As we all know, local authorities are coming under increasing scrutiny, I think. And I think some local authorities, partly because some local authorities haven't exactly acted in a very prudent manner. Now, in this particular, this is nothing to do, doesn't cast any aspersions on our own officers, but we have a situation where the current directors are, how shall I put it, their position may have a conflict of interest with their actual other responsibilities. So, and I think it hasn't caused us any problems. There's no issue here at all from that perspective. But we have to be seen to be absolutely, dare I use the term, whiter than white, because we have to, and I think also, I believe the auditors have raised this as a possible issue. It's not something that is a problem for us at the moment. I must emphasize that. But I think just to play safe, I think we are proposing to change the representation. And you'll see, I think in the paper, that we now propose that the future representation will be the head of finance and the head of property. And they'll take over from the current members, who William Cornell and also the head of housing. So so I think this is a correct proposal, and it's something I hope you can all support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harper.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear what you just said, John, in terms of this report, because I must admit, when I read it through, I suppose my concern was almost the flip side, because I can see the benefit, given that this company exists, to provide, well, every time we purchase all these houses Mark referred to earlier, they're all invested in Maidstone, God, what's it called? Property Holdings, yeah? Are they not? I thought they were.
Can I clarify, Chair? Yes, Maidstone Property Holdings exists just for our private rented sector housing, which is, as it's mentioned, Granada House, Lenworth House, and some other properties. We hold the properties that house homeless families in the general fund, in the main council ledgers. So it's just the private rented sector housing that this covers.
Right, thank you. That's useful clarification, because okay, yeah. I suppose my point really was, well, given this is, if you like, the property we hold to make money out of, I can always see the benefit in a way of William Cornell and John Littlemore being directors, because they're our housing, they're our senior housing experts. Obviously, John Littlemore in his role of sort of head of housing, and William as a relevant director. But obviously, I hear what John said in terms of Grant Thornton, who, yeah, I sort of see them at the Audit and Risk Committee. I think it's a shame if those two are coming off, And I've no problems at all with the two other officers being nominated, but I just think something which is quite a strategic company in terms of owning properties we purchase to effectively make money out of from the private rented sector. It just have been nice to have had a director, a council director, sitting there as one of the one of the directors of that company. But I'm not particularly strong. I think that I could see the benefit of that. But equally, if this is what's been worked through and considered the best way forward, then I won't object to it. But I just wondered if any thought had been given to that, just given the nature of this in terms of its strategic aims to generate money from housing, and also the other issue that it is to do with housing.
Thank you. Did you want to come in on that, Councillor Perry or Mark?
Yes, well, I just want to I briefly say that as the current cabinet member, I'm technically the shareholder of this company, so it's in my responsibility to ensure that the council's interests are fully covered, really. And sorry. No, as a shareholder, I'm technically the owner of the company, I suppose. But it's a slightly different position. But all I'm really saying is that I think, as a cabinet member, that it is part of my responsibility to ensure that the council is safeguarded in this area. Now, I personally have never had a problem with the current directors at all, so don't get me wrong on that. But nevertheless, I think, as I said before, it's essential that we are clear in who's responsible, and there are no conflict of interest at all that we can be accused of. So I just think this is in some ways a technical change more than anything else to make sure that our governance is properly in line. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Chairman. And I've got a little bit of experience in terms of what are sometimes referred to as LATCOs. From what I when I was a cabinet member in another place, I was pleased to hear John just talk about the shareholder board versus the operational board, because what you actually have is a chain of responsibility, and and to the extent that the ownership of the trading company is Maidstone Borough Council, and as members we hold that responsibility. That's the shareholding board, and then you have the trading element of it, and frankly, where you've got the trading element, which needs to report to the shareholder, we do need to be. It's not a question of do we think that there is a likelihood of conflicts of interest. It's the need in local government to be absolutely clear that there cannot be that interpretation of conflict of interest. So I think what we're doing here is absolutely right. You could take it a stage further, and actually the trading company, could have an independent chairman, somebody who would be independent of and have that sole responsibility, and then you do away with that altogether. Somebody who would be contracted to provide a certain number of hours, and you see a lot of companies advertising for the NHS do it as well, in terms of non-exec chairman type of thing that step in. So I think it's not a question of whether there are conflicts of interest. It's being transparent in a way that we are saying there cannot be conflicts of interest in the way that this is set up. And I think that from my background and of setting up some of these companies somewhere else, I think what we're doing here today is absolutely the right thing to do, and it has my full support. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Are you proposing? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Conyell second. Is that agreed, members? Agreed. Excellent. Thank you. And yeah, that was the last agenda item. So I now declare this meeting closed. Thank you all for your time. Thank you.